South Africans' dissatisfaction with government, parliament and democracy as a whole is a key factor behind low voter turnout. This was revealed in a new study commissioned by the Independent Electoral Commission ahead of the 2024 national and provincial elections. The Electoral Commission presented its findings of election-related surveys earlier today. To tell us more about the findings, I'm joined here in the studio by IEC Commissioner Dr. Nomsa Masuku. Dr. Masuku, thank you so much for your time this evening. We really do appreciate it. Allow me to perhaps start right where we've just started this bulletin. Those scenes of a rather chaotic council sitting. Yes, local government at local government level, but it's not the first that we've seen since the last local government election, where coalitions really have become a far more popular, I could call it, far more relevant to us right now. In your opinion, what do scenes like this, not particularly what happened there or what the details are, but scenes like that, what kind of impact does it have on the voting population or even future voting populations in South Africa?
Okay. If the research that we listened to the entire day today is anything to go by, it depends on what the profile of the voter is that is looking at those sins. Because if you look at the demography of the South African voter, it is made up of mostly people that are older, and then of course it's got the younger side. And what it is that we're battling with is that we do not have enough voters on the young side of the scale that are there. So if you look at the research findings, depending on where you are sitting, the older people, I would imagine, would look at it and feel like they'd want something much more orderly. Maybe people who are younger would welcome they would call it vibrancy. They would call it whatever is necessary in order to effect change, and they would welcome it. So what we learned today was that the voter is a nuanced person, especially what is called the young voter. It's a very nuanced category. It is not that it's heterogeneous. It's not a block. It is not a block, and it does not behave as a block. And contrary to what people normally call it, it's not apathetic. Something else is going on there, but certainly it doesn't look like apathy. It looks like alienation.
Wow. So the title of this survey is called, the theme was Safeguarding Democracy in an Age of Growing Mistrust.
Yes.
Would it be fair to say you can break that down into a few things? I immediately thought of bad service delivery or lack of service delivery, a lack of delivery of promises in the last elections, social media having an impact on mistrust in terms of information that's out there. Would those kinds of things be on the list that you found in the survey that is enforcing this growing mistrust? What did you find in the survey is fueling it?
Okay. Let us begin at a macro level and say that there's a general unhappiness, not just in South Africa, but globally, around the efficacy of democracy, generally. Okay. Now, if you break that down and come to the level of a nation state like South Africa, what is happening here is that all those factors that you list, they come together and make people make a decision about, I'm not happy with this. It's not working for me. It's not working for me because, one, I think my vote doesn't matter. So they're questioning whether their vote has any value at all. Is it worth actually getting up and going to vote and register and be involved in the process? Or they feel, actually, you know what? It's not going to change anything. And the researchers called that fatalism. So in other words, people are saying that it's not going to change anything.
So what's the point?
What is the point? And I think the overriding message was that is the trend that we've got to watch. when people begin to think that my one vote does not matter, it does not have the chance to do anything that is significant, you want to watch that trend and you want to, as soon as possible,
arrest
that trend. The question is, who does the arresting?
And how?
And what we've seen in a lot of conversations is that the response is that the Electoral Commission must do something about it. And the difficulty, though, is that a lot of the things that are a problem, that are driving people from turning up or from abstaining from participating are outside the control of the Electoral Commission. Because as an election management body, the Electoral Commission has a very, very clearly defined mandate. It's a procedural mandate, even though that procedural mandate is affected by a much broader context, ranging from the war in Ukraine right down to the issues that we have, load shedding and all of those things. And I am not happy with my political party. And therefore, because I'm not happy with my political party, rather than transferring my vote to somebody else or shopping around for other options, I'd just rather stay at home.
It really does make your job very difficult in terms of setting boundaries. Because, I mean, every 4 years, every 2 years, in local government elections, general elections, I've had this conversation with your colleagues before because in as much as we've been a democracy for more than 20 years, there is still a lot of education that's needed for how a democracy works. And that is part of your job, explaining to people, allowing them to understand, yes, you can make your mark, but that's not where your job as a voter or as a citizen ends. Then it's about keeping whoever you voted for accountable, and this is what you can do to do that.
Yes.
Do you find that there is too much expected of the IEC? Because yes, you can make it easier for people to vote. You made online registering possible not so long ago, and I think there was a far better turnout amongst the youth because you made it easier for them to vote. But you also can't give people a reason to vote. That is not your job, surely.
Yes. I think you've summarized it quite well. I'm going to expand on it and say that as the Electoral Commission, that duty to educate, that duty to give, to answer the question, the big why. Why should I care? As part of the society, the Electoral Commission bears that responsibility. And since it is a Chapter 9 institution, it is responsible for entrenching electoral democracy, constitutional democracy. So it has a job to do. But think about it like this. We are the people who make sure that you're preparing for a wedding, everything is there, everyone, the invites are set out and all of those things. We don't actually compete.
You don't provide the bride and groom.
We don't provide the bride and groom. And so we cannot generate the options, nor can we define what those options are. We mediate between the players as best as we can. What the research does show, though, is that in terms of administrative barriers to voting, most people in South Africa believe there are almost none. So we rank very, very high. In other words, we've done everything that we can to remove the structural barriers that are there for voting. There's a question that did arise, was that one of the things that you could do is to make a registration automatic. In other words, as soon as you get your identity document, you've got automatic registration.
Why is that impossible?
It is not impossible. I just don't know if it would pass a constitutional muster. If you look at, for example, how we got to the ruling that has led to the changing of the Electoral Act, which said that as much as Section 19 gives you the right to associate, it also gives you the right not to associate. So I would imagine that the right vote has both a positive and a negative aspect to it. But I am not a justice, thank goodness. I would not have to make that call. So I don't know if it would, but it is a thought. I think it is something that we have to consider. I think it is something that we have to go out and ask researchers to look at. I certainly am persuaded by research that says that if you lower the voting age, because voting becomes a habit. So the earlier you start voting, the more likely you are going to do it as a habit. The research is telling us that South Africans generally are still quite committed to their democracy. They're still quite committed. They're not happy with the specifics of it and how it is running out, but they are still happy about living in an environment that provides free speech and all of the things that come with the democracy. So there are conversations that have to be made, but it won't be the call of the Electoral Commission. We don't make the law, we simply implement the law.
Can we finish off this conversation? Because unfortunately we've lost run out of time, but we're going to be having this conversation continually, I feel, especially over the next year as we head towards the 2024 elections. Young people specifically was a big focus of the survey that you did, and their reasons for voting, for registering, or not doing so. And in as much as you said boundaries need to be placed about what you can or cannot do under the auspices of the IEC, what can you do to try and get more young people more involved and more interested and engaged in the democratic process? Because I suppose before we went to air for what our memories are of watching our parents vote for the first time, those halcyon days of happiness where people didn't mind queuing for 10 hours because we still live in a very unequal society. Some people get to vote in a warm little town hall or civic center. Others have to queue in a tent, be it rain or wind, and that's the reality of a South African society. But young people perhaps are showing that they're not willing really to put up with that. If I can register online, great. Why can't I vote online? Why do I need to go and queue? They are always going to ask why, because that's what the youth does. Yeah. What are some of the things that you think that you could potentially look at implementing just to try and get your hooks into them when it matters most?
Okay. The overriding message from today's seminar and the research that we've done over many, many years is not so much about what the Electoral Commission can do. It is about how to change what is on offer for people to choose. The Electoral Commission has a duty to remove all barriers that can stop people from showing up. So making sure that we work on when you show up, the process is efficient. We can increase trust in the process and all of those things. So all of those procedural things that we do, our job is to continuously look at, introspect, and make sure that we minimize errors, we minimize all kinds of mistakes that can be made, because they can serve to dissuade people from engagement. But the real crux of the problem is something that I think is worth looking at, and South Africans should know. South Africa is like most of the continent. It's a young country. It's full of very, very young people. And so when young people choose to not participate, even if they don't change any voting behavior, by virtue of their numbers, you are going to have low voter turnout. And we have to begin to talk about the nature of our politics, the substance of our politics, and the form of our politics.
And the importance of civic duty, no matter what your politics is.
That is correct. The issue of civic duty, from what the research shows, is that people are beginning to question civic duty, which I found a bit of a I didn't expect that, but if you look at the data, it is showing that increasingly people are no longer persuaded by the fact that you've got a duty to sustain a democracy, and you do so by showing up. That is no longer sticking as a persuasive way of telling people of why they should stay engaged. Now that is dangerous, because democracies are very fragile, they have to be sustained.
Gosh, such fascinating stuff from that survey. Thank you so much for coming to share at least some of it, and I'm sure more than most of it will be available online over the next few days.
Absolutely, on the IEC website.
Available on the
Yes.
IEC website. There you've had it. Thank you so much, IEC Commissioner Dr. Nomsa Masuku, making the time for us this evening. We really, really do appreciate it.